Dog won't leave church, pastor checks camera. He tried to get into the church without anyone noticing, but the pastor saw him. The pastor tried his best to keep him out, but it seemed like the dog was there to stay. He sat quietly for the entire service, staring ahead of himself. He was staring at something, but what could it be? It wasn't long before everyone knew about the dog in the church. Gregory Melroy was a pastor who grew up in San Donacy. He served at the Santa Maria Assunta Church for more than 10 years. He had seen people from all walks of life pass through the town and the church. Anyone in the town would tell you that he was a kind man and always worked to help others. He organized charity events and provided sermons for the last 10 years. It was like he was a saint. San Donacy was a small town where everyone was well acquainted with each other. So rumors spread fast, especially ones to do with the church. The German Shepherd appeared for the sermons and Melroy kept leading him back outside. But the dog was graying and clearly stubborn. He had to start the sermon, so he left the dog, who came back inside. The cute dog sat and watched while people at the sermon laughed and smiled at the spectacle. But it was no laughing matter. The dog was at least well behaved during the sermon. He just sat down and looked at the left aisle. But what was he looking at? When the sermon ended, people even petted the well-behaved dog as they left. "You're not so bad," Pastor Melroy said. This led to him to make concessions for the dog, letting him stay if he kept up the behavior. The dog came back the following week and Melroy smiled at him. The dog also sat at the exact spot and looked off into the left aisle again. Melroy remembers someone whispering about the dog seeing the dead. But he wanted to look at the cameras to see what the pooch was really looking at. But what he would find on the footage would have him questioning everything. The dog was completely still. He just looked into the left aisle again and again. Melroy now cared for this dog and decided he wanted to find out what was going on. The dog had to have been focusing on something, but what was it? Clearly, the dog didn't have an owner in the crowd of churchgoers. He decided that he would take the dog to the vet and they could tell him more about the behavior. The vet told them that the dog was completely healthy and happy. But just as he was leaving, he noticed something weird on the form that the vet had filled out. He would be looking for something to write with as soon as he saw what it said. They had picked up a microchip on the dog. He was a 12-year-old German Shepherd and his name was Tommy. Melroy called the number on the microchip, but no one answered. Melroy was disheartened and headed back to the church with Tommy. As he was closing up, he noticed that the dog refused to go. After getting him outside, he just sat at the doors of the church. What did Tommy want? Melroy had to find out. Tommy was desperately trying to get his attention to follow him. Where were they going? With a sigh, Pastor Melroy decided he would follow the dog and find out where they were going. But he'd never forget what he'd stumbled upon. Tommy took him through some dark streets until he led him on a dusty road to a house on a hill. Dim light shined through the dusty glass. When Tommy got to the door unexpectedly opened. Did this normally happen? It seemed very rehearsed. Pastor Melroy couldn't deny that he was feeling a little uneasy. But he wanted to meet Tommy's owner. Did they know he went to church every day? But when she opened the door, it wasn't what the pastor expected. A friend of Tommy's owner opened the door. He had never seen her before. After the pastor introduced himself, she told him Tommy's story. Pastor Melroy found out that Tommy's owner had sadly passed away some time ago. His owner's name was Loki. She was a quiet woman who kept to herself, but one thing she was known for was taking in a number of stray dogs every now and again. Tommy was Loki's third dog to rescue, and the two created an incredible bond that she didn't experience with her other rescues. She found Tommy when he was 2 years old, abandoned in a field in a remote part of the countryside. He had no collar and no microchip. He was in a bad condition, so she immediately took him home. With her 2 other adopted rescues long gone, she was able to focus all of her attention on Tommy. From then on, he was always by her side. He even sat outside the church entrance and waited for her whenever she went to Mass. When she passed away, her friend recalled how Tommy was so heartbroken that he followed her coffin into Pastor Melroy's church. Not one of the mourners had the heart to prevent him from entering the church, so instead, they let him join them at the funeral service. The town mayor said that now, all the locals want to adopt Tommy, and he quickly became everyone's dog, from the butchers to the bakers, they all take care of him. Loki's friend told Pastor Melroy that after Loki died, Whenever the heartbroken dog heard the sound of the church bells, she'd find him at the church, perhaps hoping his owner may appear again or because it felt familiar to go. Tommy would sit in front of the altar, facing the congregation. Priests would even descend into the aisles to give churchgoers the Eucharist so that, oh well, Tommy wouldn't be disturbed. For Dale, things had been rough over the past year, but it was nothing compared to what his wife, Nancy, was going through. The hospital visits were endless and drained a bit of her soul away every time. He did everything he could to make sure she at least felt as comfortable as possible. But he did have an extra set of hands, or paws. This last visit had taken more out of her than normal. So, after he had tucked her into her favorite spot on the sofa, he rushed to make Nancy her favorite cup of tea. Out of the corner of his eye he saw their two dogs Sissy and Barney already snuggled up to his wife, comforting her. They could definitely tell how ill she was. However, Sissy, a miniature schnauzer, clearly loved her human mom the most. In fact, in a few days, this dog was going to show just how much she adored her owner and what dangerous lengths she would take to show that love. It was going to give Nancy a shot at beating the cancer and letting them spend the rest of their lives together. It had been hours of anxious pacing in Cedar Rapids Mercy Medical Center before the doctor came back to tell him everything was okay. He finally allowed himself to smile. It had only been 3 days since he had come home to take care of the dogs. But he could tell they were antsy. They wanted their mom. Sissy most of all. On the morning of the 4th day, Dale opened the door to let the dogs out for a bathroom break. But when it came time to bring them in again, he felt his heart stop. Sissy was missing. Somehow, the little pooch had managed to dig a hole under their fence and squeeze her way under. The pounding in his heart went into overdrive. Their dog was out, who knows where, with plenty of traffic and other dangers. Dale's mind raced with worst-case scenarios and he pictured the devastated look on Nancy's face. He had to find Sissy before something happened. She was a small dog, so she couldn't have gone too far. She would probably have gone to their favorite park or ice cream shop that served doggy cones, anywhere she was used to going with Nancy. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he turned down another block. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. His hands shook as he pressed the button. What was he going to tell her? Should he tell her at all or wait until she got home? Maybe Sissy would be back by then. "Honey," Nancy said. "How did our dog get to the hospital?" Dale stepped on the gas and rushed to Mercy Medical. Exactly how far did Sissy run? Nancy and Dale had no idea how their little angel had managed to find her way to a place she had never been before and with no scent to help her. She had even walked through the emergency room's doors on her own and scouted the hallways until she found Nancy's room. It wasn't just Dale and Nancy that were in shock. The entire staff heard about the amazing journey and their new visitor. This fuzzy pooch was on a clear mission. She had traversed rush hour traffic and a nearly impossible path to get to her human mom. It was clear how much she loved Nancy.